Did you hear the story of the three brothers, Muhammad, Muhammad, and Muhammad? Is Muhammad Muhammad here? His brother Muhammad Muhammad. He's not here. That's the only brother I met named Muhammad Muhammad. See, none of you heard the story of the three brothers, Muhammad, Muhammad, and Muhammad? Did you ever meet someone named Muhammad Muhammad? MashaAllah. May Allah have mercy on him. Ameen. Alright, so it was said that a man was on his deathbed. So he called his sons. He said, Muhammad inherits. Muhammad inherits. And as for Muhammad, he does not inherit. So then they became confused. They didn't know who's the one who doesn't inherit. So it was said to them, no one can solve your problem but the clever judge in Baghdad. So they went on their way to go to this judge. On their way, they encountered a man saying, my camel, my camel. Has anyone seen my camel? So he met the brothers. He told them, did you see my camel? The first brother said, your camel. Was your camel carrying honey? He said, yes, yes, yes. The second brother said, your camel was carrying vinegar? He said, yes, that's my camel. The third brother said, your camel was an old camel? He said, yes, that's my camel. Where is it? They said, Wallahi, we never saw your camel. He said, what? You took my camel. I'm going to take you to the judge. They said, we're going to the judge now. So they went. So while they were on their way, they encountered a man saying, my wife, my wife. Has anyone seen my wife? So he met the brothers. So he asked them, have you seen my wife? So the first brother said, your wife, was she pregnant? He said, yes, yes, that's my wife. The second brother said, your wife, was she one-eyed? He said, yes, yes, that's my wife. The third brother said, your wife, was she running away from you? He said, yes. Where is she? They said, Wallahi, we never saw your wife. He said, what? You took my wife. I'm going to take you to the judge. They said, we're going to the judge now. So they went. So they got to the judge. So the judge started with the owner of the camel. He said, if you didn't take his camel, how were you able to describe his camel? So the first brother said, I saw in the traces of the camel some droplets being eaten by ants. And the ants like to eat sweet things. So I figured that his camel was carrying honey. The second brother said, I saw in the traces of his camel other drops being eaten by flies. And the flies like to eat the bitter things. So I figured that his camel was carrying vinegar. The third brother said, I saw in the traces of his camel the twigs that the camel was eating and how it ate part of the branch and left part of the branch. And that's how the old camels eat. So I figured it was an old camel. So the judge said, well, you have no right over these brothers, then you can't prove that they took your camel. So he said to them, well, how about this man's wife? Your description of her is even more accurate. So the first brother said, I saw in his wife's traces that the heel of her foot was deeper in the sand than the rest of her foot. So I figured that she had weight on her back. So I guessed that she was pregnant. The second brother said, I saw in his wife's traces how she had one foot straight, but the other foot was diagonal. So I figured that she can only see out of one eye. So when she walks in a way that leaves such footprints. One straight foot, one diagonal foot. One straight foot, one diagonal foot. The third brother said, I saw in his wife's traces that after every few steps, her feet would straighten out. Then they would go crooked again, and then they would straighten out. So I figured that she was running from him, and then she would stop to look behind herself. That's when her feet would line up. And then she would run again, and then she would stop to look behind herself. So that's how I knew that his wife was running away from him. So the judge was like, wow. Well, you have no right over these brothers. You can't prove that they took your wife. So the judge was very impressed with these brothers, and he told them, you will be my guests. So he took them home. Then he had food prepared for them. And he told his servant, sit with them while they eat and observe them, but I will not be joining you. And tell me about anything that happens. So the food was put, and the servant was there. And then the first brother, he started. He said, this bread, what is this bread? The woman who made this bread was on her period. The second brother said, this meat, what is this meat? This is dog meat. The third brother said, this judge, who is this judge? This judge is a bastard child. So then the servant was like, what? So then he told the judge. So the judge went to the lady who makes the bread. He said, I'm sorry, I have to ask you a question. When you were making the bread, were you on your period? And she was embarrassed. He said, I'm very sorry, but I need to know, please. She said, yes. Then he went to the farmer, the shepherd, where he got his meat from. He said to him, how could you give me dog meat? So then he was surprised. So he said, well, Judge, you know that dog that helps me take care of my sheep? Well, one day I saw that dog mating with a sheep. And the meat that I sent you was from that dog mating with that sheep. So then the judge went to his mother. And he said, Mom, who's my father? And then she was caught off guard. And then she confessed. So the judge went to the brothers. He said to them, all of this intelligence and you need to come to me? How did you know these things? So the first brother said, well, the bread was kind of tough. So I figured that the woman who was kneading the dough was weak on that day. And usually a woman would be weak if she's on her period. So I figured she was on her period. The second brother said, as for the meat, had it been from a sheep, then under the skin there would have been fat. and then under the fat there would have been meat, and then under the meat there would have been bone. But this meat had under the skin meat, and then under the meat was fat, and then under the fat was the bone, the reverse. For a sheep, there's fat under the skin, and then the meat is under the fat, and then the bone is under the meat. He told him, this meat that you gave us under the skin wasn't fat, it was meat. And then under the meat was fat, and then under the fat was bone. He said, that's dog meat. Then the third brother said, as for you, you're so-and-so who's supposed to be the son of so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. But they used to sit with their guests. So I figured that you're not from the same tree. Then the judge said, as for you, I will judge for you. And the reason why one of you doesn't inherit is because he's also a bastard child. Because there's no reason for a child not to inherit unless he's not the child. And he told them, and you're smart enough to figure out which one of you it is. That's the story of Muhammad, and Muhammad. That's the way I took it. I saw another version too. But the way I gave it to you is better than the other version I saw. MashaAllah. My guess is that the one who doesn't inherit is the one who exposed the judge.